Hi, and welcome to this week's Auspicious Agile video blog. This week we're going to take a look at Agile and design sprints. This is John Okoro. Welcome, and let's take a look. So the design sprint is something that Google Ventures came up with. It's used in Google and Google Ventures and the Google Ventures team. They released a book earlier this year, 2016, on the topic of design sprints. And we're going to take a look at how it works with Agile and how it is used across the organization. Now, of course, as we said, it was incorporated in the book. Many companies have started to use it, including Slack and others, as they use this as a way of extending and using design thinking and building it into building their products. So the Google Ventures design sprint is something that is defined in the book, of course, as we talked about. You can also take a look at a couple of resources on the web. One is the website gv.com. gv.com is googleventures.com/sprint, and that covers the design sprint, as well as the sprintstories.com website, which incorporates many stories from companies like Slack and Flatiron Health and others that have also used the design sprint. Now, we want to take a look at those and get a little bit of background on it, but basically the design sprint utilizes design thinking concepts and brings them into the world of building products, and we'll see how that ties in with Agile as well. So we're going to look at it from a few contexts. We're going to start with venture capital. Now, venture capital, of course, is what Google Ventures does, and to help their companies to be successful that they invest in, they use these design sprints. The idea is, instead of taking the usual concept and bringing your money and having an idea, building it, launching and learning, which can be a very expensive lesson to learn, instead the idea of the design sprint is to shortcut that and get the idea and then learn. So instead of spending a tremendous amount of time and money going through figuring out if it's the right idea, we spend a week basically in a design sprint, and that is what Google Ventures does. It's actually used internally at Google as well, within Google X, and a lot of the different teams within Google, with Gmail, use that as well. But each of the different teams had been using that, and the idea is basically we do 1 week of mapping, sketching things out, deciding which concept to use, prototyping it, and then testing it. And so that is the concepts behind the design sprint. Now, of course, this happens in a week, and that means that we don't spend a lot of money, we don't spend a tremendous amount of investment, and hopefully, and we know in many venture capital investments that a lot of companies don't make it. So we want to increase the odds that we're going to get some good investments, and we're going to see concepts that are actually going to be the right ones to build for that company. So in venture capital, certainly the design sprint is very valuable, and we'll also see later on for Agile teams and for product teams as well, a lot of value there. Let's take a look at the next context, and the next one is going to be the Innovation Lab. Now, the Innovation Lab is something where companies now, especially large enterprises, are trying to find new ways to deal with, like in financial services and other areas. How do they deal with disruptive technology? How do they deal with constant disruption and changes? And the Innovation Lab is a place where you try to find those answers and, well, innovate, figure out what new things that you can do to stay ahead of these changes and maybe even to lead them instead of being led by the changes. So we take a look at the Innovation Lab and how this can use a design sprint. The design sprint is going to be fed potentially by a hackathon. A hackathon could also stand alone. It's usually 2 or 3 days, and the hackathon is going to be some place where people are going to come together. They're going to be coding, and they're going to be trying out different ideas and coming up with concepts and figuring out for maybe new products or ideas. And that hackathon, of course, can run a design sprint. There is a company, there's another video on this, I believe, on YouTube, that actually ran a 3-hour design sprint, and this is something that could easily be fit into the context of a hackathon. So with a design sprint run during the hackathon very quickly, a hackathon is usually just 2 or 3 days anyway, what you're going to see is that sprint very quickly giving some ideas, giving some concepts that the hackathon team can then use, and taking those hackathon ideas and bringing them into the Innovation Lab. So now the best of those ideas will come. They will come into the Innovation Lab. They will get some funding, and they will get some money and some runway in order to build these things out, maybe over the course of several weeks or months. And in that time, the Innovation Lab is going to build out these ideas, and that might have been based on the design sprint. But it may not only happen once. It may be that the company and the organization decides, you know what, in that Innovation Lab, we want to try it again. We want to try a different concept. We want to come through, as in most Agile methods, we're going to go through and want to ideate a little bit and try some different ones. So maybe they'll decide to run another design sprint. And they may run that within the Innovation Lab or come up with some new concepts again. The idea is to continue to bring those at the cheapest and less costs to the organization and still be able to bring some great ideas to the innovation lab and to the organization. Now, when things come out of an innovation lab, they might flow into an Agile or a product team. If something flows into an Agile or a product team, one of the things, there's a few questions that we really want to make sure that we're answering. Are we building the right thing? Again, the same question the design sprint is going to help us to answer, right? Is this the right product? Is this what we need to do? And the teams will help to get some answers from that by using a design sprint. And there's another question that teams are also going to try to answer, which is, well, are we collaborating with our user, with our customer? Are we getting their input? Because a lot of the time what happens is that companies and teams will have a problem that their technology and their product teams are completely separate from their real customer or from anyone who can give that customer's input. Or maybe even their product owner in some cases may not be closely attached to a team if it's a Scrum team. So we want to make sure that we're collaborating and not having the problem of people just throwing over the wall requirements to a team and saying, go build this, because that is not something that will work very well from an Agile context. We want the collaboration up front. Again, the design sprint gives us that. So with our design sprint for product teams, we're going to go through, we're going to see if the product is indeed what we want. We use that maybe 1 week, maybe spread out over longer, but the idea is we might align it with maybe a sprint 0. For instance, for a Scrum team, we might have a sprint 0 kind of before the value producing sprints, and arguably you're going to produce some value from that design sprint too. But the idea is that you will do that first, and then you will go into your actual incremental and iterative sprints in Scrum. Of course, you could also use Kanban, you could use XP, you could use Less, or say for some other Agile method. So there's a lot of different Agile methods that are going to be available to you, but the idea is that, hey, why don't we try the design sprint first rather than doing a lot of building at a high cost? And of course, the question would come, can we run a second design sprint? After the first design sprint, you're definitely going to learn something, and you may decide to go a few different directions here. You may decide, well, this really, of course, we have learned something. It didn't cost us too much, only a week or maybe less, or maybe you stretched it out over a little more time. But the idea is you had the learning without having to build and launch everything. And now you got to make some decisions, kind of like the lean startup idea, pivot or persevere. But the idea in design sprint, or you could go ahead with that idea. So you build it as a product, you're building your innovation lab, or wherever you might go, or as a company. Or you might stop and you might just discontinue that idea because it doesn't seem to be the right one. Or you might continue with another design sprint and do a second sprint. So quite a few options for you there. Until next time, stay agile, and thanks for listening. And of course, if you're enjoying Auspicious Agile, please subscribe at the bottom by pushing the subscribe button below and liking the video. Thanks.